Viste que Konnichiwa, everybody. Is that on? Okay. Konnichiwa, minasan. How are you doing? Lucky, huh? So, welcome back to the Manzanar since 2019. So, I'm so honored to be part of this great Memorial Day or ceremony, whatever you call it's gathering. So, my name is Ken Koshio. I'm here since 2001, I think, with the master and my great mentor and my girlfriend, Sue Kunito Membri. So she's been in heaven for a while, but a lot of new generations, including myself, I'm so honored to continue to be this, and I'm a part of this entertainment, but this memorial place, hopefully, if you are familiar with this song, I want to sing with me. Unfortunately, it's in Japanese, okay? So anyways, I've been in Phoenix, California since Phoenix, Arizona since 2004. So a lot of people has been knowing me as a taiko player, but also with the long hair, people ask me what tribe I'm from. So I'm saying I'm a Japachi, okay? So you can be a Japachi too. All right, let's rock and roll. If you know this song, please sing with me. It's called Sukiyaki, and you can clap your hand too. 上を向いて歩こう涙がこぼれないように思い出す春の日一人ぼっちの夜一人ぼっちの夜 One more time 上を向いて歩こう上を向いて歩こう滲んだ星を数えて思い出す夏の日一人ぼっちの夜一人ぼっちの夜幸せは雲の上に幸せは空の上に上を向いて歩こう涙がこぼれないように泣きながら歩く一人ぼっちの夜思い出す秋の日一人ぼっちの夜一人ぼっちの夜悲しみは空の悲しみは空の影に悲しみは月の影に悲しみは月の影にAlright, I think you now remember. Sing together. Ready? Come on, sing! Spirit! We're Japanese guys. 泣きながら歩く一人ぼっちの夜 Okay, let's get together, sing 上を向いて歩こう 上を向いて歩こう Keep on! Yeah! 上を向いて歩こう Your turn! Now la 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 guys 上を向いて歩こう Chin up and walk! Don't never give up! いてIt's simple Japanese, man! を向いてあるuno, dos, tres, cuatro 上を向いて歩こう Let's say 上を向いて歩こうGreat taco drummers, give them that big hand, sir. Yeah! Arigato! That's great, Catherine! One love! Yeah! Muchas gracias! Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. If you've never met Ken Koshio, you know him now. Bob Dylan of Japanese America. And let's give it a hand for Kyoto Taiko, 17 years consecutive and 29 strong today. On behalf of the Manzanar Committee, welcome to the 54th Annual Manzanar Pilgrimage in person for the first time since 2019 and live streaming on Manzanar Instagram. Sorry, I'm shaking a little bit. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Kawita, and I will be one of your MCs today. I was on the Manzanar pilgrimage for about 10 years, and I actually MC'd in 1997 and 1998. Before we start the program, I'd like to acknowledge that this land is the ancestral homeland of the Paiute, Paya, Hunandu, Shoshone tribes. Let's offer a moment in thanks today to those whose land we stand on and share a rich history here at Manzanar. My first pilgrimage was in 1992 during the 50th anniversary of the commemoration of signing of Executive Order 9066, which led to the incarceration of 120,000 Japanese and Japanese Americans. For the past 31 years, I've missed, I think, 7 or 8 times, including the last 3, right? We all know why. Also, I missed the pilgrimage in 2005 because I had it was the 2 months after my daughter, Maya Grace, was born. She was kind of a lazy baby, I have to say. She didn't come on her first pilgrimage till she was 14 months old. And speaking of which, I'd like to introduce my co-MC, who is now 18 years old.
Hi everyone, my name is Maya Sumi, and it is an honor to be one of your co-MCs today at the Manzanar pilgrimage alongside my mom. I don't have as many memories about Manzanar, unlike my mom, who's been here for decades, and she was a co-founder of Manzanar After Dark, and she likes to call it the Madness Program. But I do remember the car rides up here, eating edamame and spam musubi, and the weather being really hot and windy today. Or it's actually not too bad today. But at the last in-person Manzanar pilgrimage, I was in 8th grade, and now 4 years later, I'll be graduating high school, and I'm committed to attend UC San Diego this fall. Go Titans! I also want to give a quick shout out to my grandparents who are here today. I think they have a blue umbrella out there. My grandpa, Walt Quita, who was incarcerated at Gila River as a preteen, used to come to the pilgrimage every year on his way to Lake Crawley and for the opening weekend of fishing season. But today is my grandma Machi's first time at the Manzanar pilgrimage. She and her family were incarcerated at Hard Mountain and the Crystal City, Texas Department of Justice Center. I'd also like to congratulate them on their 60th anniversary just yesterday.
Yeah, happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. It's really meaningful to be here today with a lot of other people. My whole family is here, my sister Gail, my brother Darren, and my niece Kaylee. My sister and brother came up with me my first time in 1992, and my partner Tony Osumi came up on the UTLA bus. So we have a very packed schedule today, so we'll get started. First, we'd like to bring up Brenda Ling, Superintendent of the Manzanar National Historic Site, who is here speaking today on behalf of Kathy Jefferson Bancroft, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer at the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone Reservation. And Kathy couldn't be here because she's at an Earth Day event, and I think she'll be here a little bit later. So, Brenda.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at this sacred site where many people's lives were upended and changed. I would like to welcome you to this first pilgrimage since the pandemic began. These last 3 years were hard on many families. We lost many of our elders, and our community had to endure the hardship of the times, including racial prejudice. But I am glad to see the strong turnout for this year's pilgrimage. The last 81 years allowed us to gain perspective and understanding through compassion and empathy, because only then can we truly honor those who lost so much of their lives being incarcerated by the government. I would also like to acknowledge that the War Relocation Authority sites were managed by the Department of the Interior, which is the parent agency of the National Park Service, starting in 1944. This is why I commit to working with the communities to tell this story accurately. Over 125,000 people were incarcerated during World War II across the United States. I would like to recognize the National Park Service manages 7 sites associated with telling the story of the Japanese-American history during World War II. We have Manzanar National Historic Site and Tule Lake National Monument in California, Minidoka National Historic Site in Idaho, the Japanese-American Memorial to Patriotism during World War II on the National Mall in DC, Bainbridge Island Japanese-American Exclusion Memorial in Washington, Honouliuli National Historic Site in Hawaii, and Amachi National Historic Site in Colorado. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge our elders who are here today who were incarcerated during World War II at any of the camps. If you are able to, would you please stand or raise your hand to be acknowledged? Okamase Samade. We are who we are because of you. Just as we stand on the shoulders of Sue Kunatomi Embry and Jim Masioka. It is important for us to learn from our past so we do not repeat them. By learning about our past, it helps us to understand our present. It is with this understanding where we can then create a better future for ourselves and our children. Let us thank the Manzanar Committee, our partner, the Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association, Manzanar National Historic Site staff and volunteers, and National Park Service employees supporting from nearby parks. I appreciate every one of you for coming here today, and I look forward to this pilgrimage at Manzanar, which is my first year, and so far it has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. At this time, we'd like to thank a few people who are here today. Consul General of Japan in San Francisco, Noguchi.
Rex Takahashi, founding member of the Manzanar Committee and author of the State Historic Landmark Plaque.
Sue Rundstrom, a founding member of the Manzanar Committee and famous Manzanar descendant.
Member Maso Kui, member of the Manzanar Congressional Commission and famous fisherman, featured in the Manzanar Fishing Club and also Manzanar tour guide. He was my first tour guide 30 years ago.
The family of Yosh Kunomiya, a Heart Mountain Fair Play Committee draft resistor.
Mae Kageyama Kakehashi, survivor of Manzanar, 100 years old. Yeah.
Mo Nishida, survivor of Manzanar, representing the 5,500 runners.
Jeff Griffith, Inyo County Supervisor, who sponsored the proclamation renouncing support for Executive Order 9066.
UTLA Asian Pacific Committee and LAUSD teachers.
And Vigilant Love. Finally, I wanted to also recognize Alan Nishio, who was born in Manzanar but is unable to be here today in person, but just want to let him know we are thinking of him.
This next speaker needs no introduction. Bruce Embry, co-chair of the Manzanar Committee since 2007.
Welcome to Manzanar. How many of you are here for the first time? Who's first? Wow. Wow, so I guess you need an introduction. We chose our theme, Generational Struggles for Democracy, because we, like so many other people in our country, are concerned about the threats to our democratic way of life. And we believe America actually faces an existential threat to many of our constitutional rights. But we also chose this theme because we know that resistance has been a constant in our nation's history. We know for generations, long before the founding of our republic, people have fought for freedom, whether it was indigenous people fighting against settler colonialism, slave rebellions, the civil rights movement of the 1960s, or to our decades-long struggle for redress and reparations. As we worry about the future of our country, we know we stand on the shoulders of giants, leaders who gave their all to our community. Today, we honor two such leaders. Jim Matsuoka, a founding member of the Manzanar Committee, a courageous political activist, and Reverend Alfred Suyuki, a Shinto priest who was a popular religious leader and who helped lead our interfaith ceremony for many, many, many years. Both men stood up for and devoted their lives to our community, and that's why we honor them here today. While we call this our 54th pilgrimage, we are continuing a tradition dating back to 1946, when the Buddhist priest, Reverend Maeda, led the first pilgrimage to Manzanar. So this is, in fact, the 77th annual pilgrimage to Manzanar, and in 1946, where they gathered before the Ireto, we gather here today as well to reflect on our history and pray for those who never returned. The Ireto, which has become the most iconic figure in Manzanar, was dedicated in 1943 in the aftermath of one of the most troubling periods of the incarceration here at Manzanar. So from its very inception, it was designed to console the souls of our families, both behind barbed wire and those that had long since passed. The Ireto has survived the wind and the elements for 80 years. It has also survived the bullets and shotgun blasts from those filled with hate. Yet this beautiful cemetery monument, like our community, remains steadfast, unbowed, and unbroken. Manzanar has another iconic feature, which we consider a monument. It is the bronze plaque on the walkway leading to the interpretive center. It too has endured the elements and survived the hate that tried to erase its message with bullets, hatchets, and chisels. Dedicated at the 1973 pilgrimage, this plaque declared Manzanar was a state historic landmark. This plaque was the first of its kind, the first time any confinement site was recognized by our government. And it was the first time the people who had endured life behind barbed wire reflected on, analyzed, and debated what had happened to them during World War II. The newly formed Manzanar Committee, led by survivors of camp, including my mother, Sue Kunotomi Embry, Jim Matsuoka, and Rex Takahashi, who's here today, crafted the words on that plaque. The words are forceful and honest: concentration camp, racism, and economic exploitation. They declared America's concentration camps violated every principle of a liberal democracy. They knew the term concentration camp is reserved for sites of the most serious human rights abuses, but they still declared that Manzanar and all the other confinement sites were not just places where their constitutional rights were stripped away, but were concentration camps where their human rights were violated and abused as well. The bronze plaque set in stone 50 years ago this month by the renowned Catholic stonemason Riozo Cado, the very same stonemason who crafted the beautiful Ireto, calls on us to remember what will happen when racism and economic greed are allowed to override our constitutional rights. While the words on the plaque are all about Manzanar, we know our history is one part of America's tortuous path towards democracy. The survivors of Manzanar knew from direct experience that white supremacy is woven into the fabric of America, but they also knew we can win justice. We believe, as Jim Matsuoka did, that there is no better place than Manzanar to gather and demonstrate our common bonds. This is why today the Manzanar Committee reaffirms its support for the struggles of the indigenous peoples for land and treaty rights. And we wholeheartedly endorse reparations for the Black community. We must embrace the vision and the courage of Jim Matsuoka, Reverend Suyuki, Ryozo Kado, my mother, Sue Kunitomi Embry, as we work for social justice. We must for the simple reason that fundamental principles are at stake, just as they were in 1942. This is the legacy of Manzanar, the legacy we have inherited and that we can leave for future generations. We leave this legacy for all people of every color and creed to learn from the past in order to build a more democratic future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Once again, a wonderful speech. Your message is so important today. In addition to this being the 80th anniversary of the 80th anniversary of the Ireto, today is also, or this year is also marks the 50th anniversary of the occupation of Wounded Knee. Sue Kunitomi Embry wrote a 1973 solidarity statement in support of Wounded Knee, which you can read in your program book. I'm going to call up Jay. Oh, okay. We have Jeremiah from, we'll let you introduce yourself.
Mana who it was. Hello, friends. I'm Jeremiah Joseph, Lone Pine Tribal member. I am here on behalf of Kathy to welcome, and I'm going to do my best. I'm kind of shooting from the hip right here. I honestly, though, first and foremost, like, thank you everybody for coming and really like showing humanity at its greatest. It's great to hear Bruce and his beforehand to kind of give me that, so where am I going to go? I know Kathy just said, okay, yeah, just welcome him, and that is, but like with what we have gathered, like giving this moment of reflection and like the progressive ideas is the best foot forward for anything, especially with what we're facing today and what we've faced, the adversity in the past and right now is prime, like this is what we have and this is what we've grown from that adversity, and to come together and to share those stories, but not just share, but to listen and to be receptive is so big. So the fact that we have so many people and so many people here for the first time is huge too. So I can guarantee each and every one of you will have a relationship with this place, as just like the indigenous do. I mean, for me, I don't ever want to have to leave. I love this place. I mean, to be, and everybody to be here to experience the water that we have up there is what carved this valley to be what it is today. And like the fact that we're here and we can see that, and we can see the Department of Water and Power just kind of doing all they can to maintain that power that offers from that water, and then they are so concerned, and that's just the way it is. Like, you can't control something like that. You have to align with that power. Like, that's just the way it is, and that's, as indigenous people, like, we know that. Like, that's embedded in our genetic memory. So again, like, it's it's really great to see everybody here and for the cause and what this pilgrimage has like really built up to, like, and it's about just that, having that reflection, because we know we can do better, you know, and it's just, okay, so how do we get there, and just with those power struggles. Excuse me, I'm going to try not to ramble, but again, I really do appreciate everybody coming to hear like what is going on, what has happened, and how to move forward. Because I mean, how else are we really going to, you know, attend to what we need to do in our day to day? Again, yeah, I thank each and every one of you. Kathy sent me on her behalf. She does say hello, and she is here present. But I don't know what I was thinking to think I can fill her place, and it's just to come up here and talk in front of so many people. But again, like, it happens natural, because it's in our DNA to come together and to listen and to do what we can for the better of everybody. You know, not just for our dollars or whatever. You know, it's about moving forward, and that's what we're doing here. Again, so thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. This year's pilgrimage is dedicated in remembrance of Reverend Alfred Suyuki from Konko Church and the Nikkei Interfaith Council, and Jim Matsuoka, a longtime community activist. I'd like to bring up the stage Cheryl Suyuki and James Matsuoka, who will speak briefly in remembrance of their fathers.
I know I always have to adjust the mic because of my height. Thank you. You feel that wind? That's the energy. Our parents are giving us energy. Hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Tsuyuki, and my sister Aileen Tsuyuki is here. The last time our father was here, I believe, was for the 50th anniversary in 2019, and how appropriate that we found a photo of him here at Manzanar, giving his sacred Shinto ceremony as part of the Konkokyo tradition. We want to thank everyone, the Manzanar Committee, for inviting us and for honoring our father today. And we just want to provide a sense of comfort. We know that our loss is also a shared loss with many, many people. And when we lost him in November last year, 21st of 2022, it was a very amazing moment for me personally. And I say that because I had been staying with him at his bedside, and I needed to take a lunch break, and my sister went to be there for him during my lunch break, and I went back home. And I happened to read some documents that the hospice company gave us, and at the moment when I was reading this passage was when he passed, because my sister called me right after I finished reading this, and I thought, oh, how powerful. His spirit was transforming as I was reading this passage. It was just, you can't time these things, folks. So I just want to read this because it gave me so much comfort at that time when he transitioned. And I hope that it gives you some comfort as well. Maybe not for just our father if you knew him, but for any loved one who you may have lost or maybe losing or will encounter in the future. These experiences are life-changing. So this passage, it's about a ship that's sailing, and the pronoun here is she, and I'm going to just read it as is, but feel free to use whatever pronoun is appropriate for you in your situation. I am standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until, at length, she hangs like a speck of white cloud, just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she is gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side, and she is just as able to bear the load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "There, she is gone," there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "Here she comes." So that transition, when our father passed, he was simply moving from this physical world to the spiritual world. He's still with us, everyone. He's here in the wind. His energy is here, I'm sure you feel. We brought the photo as a physical manifestation because when we lose people, we try to hold on to the physicality because we're human. And that's okay. But despite his physical passing, Reverend Alfred Siyuki's mitama, or his spiritual essence, lives on in each of us. Allow us to carry forth the torch of his life's efforts into the next generation. That's us. To serve humanity with an open heart, a love and appreciation for life, and a broad smile. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. Before I start, I just want to give a big shout out to the Manzanar Committee, Nikkei Progressives, that's right, and you, and of course the big NCRR, that's my family right there, so thank you. I just want to acknowledge you before I begin. What is Manzanar? Manzanar, the Japanese internment camp during World War II, where over 10,000 Japanese Americans were imprisoned. The conditions were deplorable, and many families lost everything. Despite this, Japanese Americans still found ways to create community. It's important to learn from this dark chapter in American history so that this type of thing doesn't happen again. My father, Jim H. Matsuoka, dedicated his life to fighting injustice and standing with folks on the fringes. Truthfully, he detested this place. He was imprisoned here from age 6 to 10. 6 to 10. When I used to speak with my father about his childhood, I'd ask him, "Did you even have a birthday party?" And he replied, "Nothing like what you had." They stole his childhood, and to add insult to injury, they made him feel as if he was personally to blame for the war. These experiences changed him and led him to the fight for redress. He always told me to never lose hope because a place without hope is a dangerous place to be. He reminded me to always fight the good fight because it's simply the right thing to do. HR 40. All right, Black reparations. He was here at the 50th pilgrimage in 2019 to receive the Sue Kunitomo Embry Legacy Award. Sue Embry was one of my father's most revered friends. He respected her, and when he received the award, he was extremely proud. He had issues returning to Manzanar, though, especially the one back in 1969. That's the first one. He would say, "I already spent 4 years of my life here in the freezing cold or in the blazing sun. What more did they want from me?" In my father's eyes, Manzanar was a true American horror story. The worst part is that it can leave a young person filled with self-hate. And when asked if he thought something like this could happen again, he replied, "Well, yes, but I certainly hope not." As far as he was concerned, there was racism then and there's racism now. With that said, in 2019, while at the 50th pilgrimage, he experienced different communities and cultures together in the name of peace and solidarity. This is what I'm talking about right here. This is solidarity right here. Give yourselves a hand to come together like this. I feel the love. I wish my father was here, actually. Sorry about that. He started to see Manzanar as a place where people from all different walks could come together and effect change. I'm almost certain had he lived, he would have returned. On behalf of my father and my family, it's truly an honor to be here with you today. I'd like to leave you with a saying my father used to say: integration over assimilation. This is America, and like my father said, it belongs to us all. Thank you, and God bless. Before I leave, I just want to say one thing. Before my father passed, he was working on a children's book. Oh, thank you very much. This is my family right here, Darlene. He was working on a children's book, and it was based on his experiences as a child here. And somewhere along the line, I kind of gave him the idea of, well, maybe your cat should tell the story. So be on the lookout for Inky and the Treasure of Manzanar. That's it right here. If you run into me sometime today, ask me for a couple stickers. I got a couple left. Thank you, folks. Manzanar Pilgrimage. Give yourselves a round of applause. Rest in peace.
Thank you so much, Cheryl and James. It's really nice to be able to hear the tributes of their fathers. Also wanted to just mention here that we heard just yesterday the sad news that longtime Manzanar committee member Wilbur Sato passed away last week. Wilbur was known for his wonderful poetry and decades on the Manzanar committee, and also he was one of the people that read to the orphans at the Manzanar Children's Village. I heard he read them Les Miserables while incarcerated here at Manzanar.
We're going to keep the program moving now to our musical guest, Los Manzaneros. Los Manzaneros is a group of retired multiracial educators, political activists, artists, and chefs. Friends for over 4 decades, many of them have been coming up to the pilgrimage for years. The song was composed by Mundo Armijo with lyrics by Juan Taboada and Los Manzaneros. So you can find the lyrics in your program booklet, so please give it up for Los Manzaneros.
Thanks, everyone. Just speaking for the Manzaneros, we're going to be counting on you to sing the chorus. We added one chorus at the beginning of the song, so please feel free to sing along. On page 4. In the history of this country, there's a story we must tell. Japanese American people, U.S. citizens as well. They lost their homes and businesses, had to pack the things they own. Some were sent to Manzanar. Manzanar is home. 10,000 people lived and died here in Manzanar. Underneath the hot and blazing sun, they burned and scarred. Despite these harsh conditions, imprisoned behind barbed wire, they never lost their dignity and hearts full of fire. Manzanar we come to pay our respects. Manzanar we won't forget how a people's rights and freedoms were taking away this land of the free.
Now a loyalty oath was requested, and this confused the people so, because if you could not say yes to that request, my friend, to Tule Lake you'd go. Yet many volunteered to serve, and they formed the 442 to fight and die for these inalienable rights that we all hold as true.
Manzanar, we come to pay our respects. Manzanar, we won't forget how a people's rights and freedoms were taken away in this land of the free. Let's not forget the hardships and injustice that occurred. The people's will to survive and the courage to endure. The road was rough and weary, but they came from near and far. On a pilgrimage in 1969, they marched to Manzanar. Manzanar, we come to pay our respects. Manzanar, we won't forget how a people's rights and freedoms were taken away in this land of the free. Manzanar, we come to pay our respects. Manzanar, we won't forget how a people's rights and freedoms were taken away in this land of the free. In the land of the free. In the land of the free. Is this the land of the free? Thank you.
Okay, this is the part of the program where, has everybody got their water? Hold it up, take a hydrate break, okay? Thank you, Los Manzaneros. Let's give them another round of applause. Our first, next I'd like to bring up, or introduce our first keynote speaker, Manjusha Kulkarni, Executive Director of AAPI Equity Alliance, which serves and represents 1.6 million Asian and Pacific Islanders in Los Angeles County. In March 2020, Manju was the co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate, tracking COVID-related hate incidences against AAPIs. Manju and others have been recognized as honorees of the Time 100 Most Influential People and the Bloomberg list, and recipient of the 2021 Webby Social Movement of the Year Award and 2022 Forbes 50 over 50 for her leadership in the Stop AAPI Hate movement. Please give a warm welcome to Manju.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and to the Manzanar Committee for inviting me to join you today. It's a true honor and privilege to be part of the 54th Annual Manzanar Pilgrimage. But I want to first address the elephant in this space. No, I'm not a sweet Japanese confection. I know for those of you who know manju, right, is a special treat. And so every time I meet a Japanese American, they say, oh, wait, you know that you're a Japanese confection, right? And so and just a few minutes ago, somebody approached me with exactly that. I think that is part of the reason I feel so close to this community. And it is also some of the work I had an opportunity to do on behalf of Japanese Latin Americans. Before I begin, I want to just warn you that some of the remarks and the information that I share is going to be painful, and it's going to trigger negative feelings. These are reports that we have gotten from Stop AAPI Hate. I was waiting in line at a hardware store. A man cut in front of me, so I mentioned there was a line. He yelled at me, "Stupid effing chink. Go back to the country you came from. Do you effing speak English?" A direct quote, this incident was reported by a young Asian American woman in Los Angeles. I want to apologize for the offensive language. 11,000 such incidents. 11,000 that have been reported to Stop AAPI Hate since 2020. 11,000 against Otosans and Okasans. 11,000 aimed at our nanis and nanas. 11,000 hate incidents targeting our children. 11,000 individuals were incarcerated here in Manzanar. 11,000 Japanese Americans removed from their homes. 11,000 children, women, men forced into barracks just a few feet away from us. 11,000 who are miles away from the only life that they knew. Anti-Asian hate is not new. It did not begin with the COVID pandemic. It did not start with the attack on Pearl Harbor. It has been with us since the very founding of the United States. And this understanding led Russell Jung, Cynthia Che, and me to create Stop AAPI Hate and work to address the newest iterations of racism against our communities. The Naturalization Act of 1790 allowed only free white persons to naturalize, to become U.S. citizens. 85 years later came the Page Act prohibiting Chinese women from coming to the United States. The misogynistic law labeled these women as unhygienic sex workers. It prevented Chinese families from settling in the U.S. and developing deep roots. In 1917, we saw the enactment of the Asiatic Barred Zone Act, an outright prohibition on all Asians from coming to America, expanding that of the Chinese Exclusion Act. And less than a decade later, in the 1920s, states like California passed alien land laws. Such legislation sought to prohibit immigrants who could not become U.S. citizens because of repressive naturalization laws from owning property. These laws literally stole millions from the rightful owners, preventing thousands of East Asians and South Asians from farming their lands and feeding their families. Racism is the father of race, said MacArthur genius Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's not the other way around. Racism was necessary in the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s, the so-called Age of Enlightenment, for Europeans to subjugate Africans, North and South Americans, and Asians, to commit genocide and enslave millions. Difference in phenotype, color of one's skin, the shape of one's eyes, the texture of one's hair, offered justification for this mass dehumanization. In racism, the fear and scapegoating of Japanese Americans justified the dehumanization here in Manzanar and in 10 other detention facilities. And it led at the same time to the kidnapping of thousands of Japanese Latin Americans from their homes in Peru, Costa Rica, Panama, and Brazil by the U.S. government, and their subsequent incarceration here in the United States. People who were left out of the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, individuals whom I had the honor to represent as part of the pro bono legal team in the 1990s, the brave women and men whom we at Campaign for Justice advocated to obtain an apology and $5,000 in reparations. But it is not racism alone, but also misogyny and imperialism. Misogyny that played a part in the passing of the Page Act and in the 2020 murders of 6 Asian women in Atlanta who were fetishized and hypersexualized by a white supremacist. American imperialism, along with that of the British and Australians, prevented South Asians from leaving British India. Imperialism led to the overthrow of leaders and occupation of Hawaii, Samoa, and other Pacific islands. And the desires for empire are at the roots of much of the competition today with China, which in turn has led to scapegoating of Chinese scientists. And the racism, misogyny, and imperialism are putting Asian Americans today in harm's way, leading to verbal harassment against queer AAPIs, physical assaults against our elders, and workplace discrimination against women in our communities. In a recent survey Stop AAPI Hate did with the University of Chicago, we found that almost 50% of our community members, that is 10 to 12 million individuals across our nation, have experienced anti-Asian hate in just the past few years. 10 to 12 million. Growing up in Montgomery, Alabama in the 70s and the 80s, I know too well what racism looks like. My mother experienced workplace discrimination, not being hired at a local hospital despite her qualifications. She was asked by a white male interview panel, "Why do you foreigners come to the US and take all of our jobs?" Needless to say, she didn't get the position. And when I was in 11th grade, my AP American History teacher asked my classmates if I should be interned if America was at war with India. 24 out of my 25 classmates, many of whom I considered my friends, voted to incarcerate me simply because of my race. And that was as it should be, my teacher emphasized, defending the executive order of 9066. And so for me, past may very well be prologue. Incarceration of Asian Americans, this time potentially Muslims, Sikhs, and South Asians, may happen again in just a few years. Alien land laws are once again weaving their way through the legislatures of Texas, Montana, Virginia, and Georgia today. And with the banning of books that discuss race, the whitewashing of American history, and the suppression of votes and insurrection attempts at our capital, the U.S. seems to be on a slow road to fascism. But while race has been used to subjugate millions across our globe, it has also been used as a unifying force for political power. La Raza, the movement for Black Lives, have brought together Latinx Americans, African Americans, and for us, for whom the very term Asian American is still aspirational, we are unifying under the broad umbrella of AA and PI to assert our political power, to fight anti-Asian hate, and also anti-Blackness, and also Islamophobia, and also anti-immigrant sentiment. And with our community support, we at Stop AAPI Hate are advocating for ethnic studies in school, for true community safety solutions like living wage, like reparations, like school equity, and for enhanced civil rights protections, and working to change policy at local, state, and federal levels. We, as AAPIs, are making our voices heard. Japanese American women here at Manzanar endured much hardship, and they also spoke out against the tyranny. And like them, AAPI activists across communities such as Grace Lee Boggs, Kala Bagai, and Yuri Kochiyama have shown us the way, solidarity and allyship on the way to liberation. And after the Atlanta shooting, I saw so many ammas and titas, nenes in the streets, marching all across our country and speaking out against violence and hate, and claiming the rights due to them as Americans. And in just the past 2 years, countless Asian American Pacific Islander women are running for office and winning, from LA to Sacramento to Washington, D.C. They, the young and old Asian American and Pacific Islander women and men, are our promise. Being in this space with you today gives me hope. Knowing of the resistance, seeing the resilience, the Manzanar pilgrimage allows me to believe in the idea of America. I want to close my remarks with the wise words of one of my favorite poets, Langston Hughes. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manju. I really want to emphasize the quote that you said, that racism really is the father of race. And so thank you so much for your work in that AAPI community. So next, we are glad to bring Dr. Arthur Hansen to the stage. Art is Emeritus Professor of History, founding director of the Japanese American Project of the Oral History Program, and the Center for Oral and Public History. He's also a founding faculty member of the Asian American Studies program at Cal State Fullerton. In 2014, he received the Sue Kunitomi Embry Legacy Award from the Manzanar Committee, and is also an author of countless books and publications about Japanese American history, and most recently published Manzanar Mosaic, Essays and Oral Histories on America's World War II Japanese American Concentration Camp, just this year. So today marks 50 years since Art's first pilgrimage in 1973.
After experiencing increased difficulty in swallowing food for several months, I arranged in February 2023 for an endoscopy to discover the cause of the problem. It revealed that my swallowing disorder was a result of a large cancerous tumor in my esophagus. A follow-up CAT scan showed that the cancer had spread from the esophagus to my liver and lymph nodes. A subsequent appointment with an oncologist disclosed that my likely future scenario would be for me to live 1 year or possibly more at home, followed by consignment to hospice care until my death. However, the oncologist offered one ray of hope, which he described as a long shot, and that was immunotherapy, in which the drug Opdivo would be infused into my body for up to a year's time, so that my immune system would be stimulated to destroy the cancer cells in my body and allow me to extend my life cancer-free. He also assured me that during the interval of my treatment, I could carry on with my customary arrays of activities, which for the most part consists of doing historical research and writing and promoting my publications, such as my newest book, Manzanar Mosaic. This explains why I'm here at the Manzanar pilgrimage today and tomorrow. If my long shot at being freed of cancer does not materialize, however, this weekend, sadly, will be my final farewell to Manzanar. Although it seems like only yesterday, it was a half century ago that I first said hello to Manzanar. That was in 1972, when two of my history department faculty members at Cal State Fullerton accompanied our Nisei colleague, Kinji Yada, on his personal pilgrimage to the place where he, at age 13, and his Issei parents became unjustly imprisoned at Manzanar in 1942. On that occasion, I recall that virtually all of Kinji's commentary consisted of retelling fond recollections of the positive aspects of his enforced confinement, participating in sporting events like baseball and basketball, hanging out and smoking cigarettes with his buddies, listening to swing bands and learning to jitterbug, and being sometimes included in the upbeat activities of an older group of popular teenage guys called the Manzanites. I could not fully grasp the rationale for Kinji's buoyant take on his concentration camp experience until many years later, when in 2013 I read the memoir of Hank Umamoto, Kinji's closest Manzanar friend, a book entitled From Manzanar to Mount Whitney. Umamoto's take on his adolescent time at Manzanar was so rose-colored that he chose to decline his $20,000 redress payment. I then realized that if Kinji and Hank as well could look back positively on their Manzanar stretch because there were plenty of upsides to being a young person in camp, it was also the case that their very status shielded them from many of the slings and arrows that even their slightly older Nisei and Kibe siblings and neighbors had to confront. These included, most notably, the loyalty registration and military draft, since the response to one or the other could lead an inmate to being remanded to a high-security segregation center and or an alien enemy internment camp, consigned to the perilous war fronts of Europe and Asia, or a federal prison, or plagued by the loss of U.S. citizenship and post-war life in war-devastated Japan. When I returned to the CSUF campus for my brief sojourn to Manzanar, I could not get the campsite out of my mind. Walking around the grounds of that mile-square camp and seeing the scant number of still-standing buildings, the concrete footprints of 36 barrack apartments and other structures that housed and serviced 10,000 inmates and their governmental keepers, and the exposed artifactual remnants of an imprisoned population's daily lives, all framed by the spectacular beauty of snow-capped 14,379-foot Mount Williamson, the second highest mountain in the Sierra Nevada range. This stamped an indelible impression on my mind. This prompted me to take two steps. First, to devote my 2 courses at Cal State Fullerton in historical writing to have the enrolled students undertake an original research paper on an aspect of the World War II exclusion and incarceration of Japanese Americans. To prepare them, I exposed them to 2 guest lecturers from Cal State Fullerton, the aforementioned Kinji Yada and a female dean, Dr. Hazel Jones, who had served as a high school English teacher at Manzanar. This led several students to focus their research papers on that camp's experience. The second step was for me, at the encouragement of one of my re-entry graduate students, Betty Midson, to launch within the CSU Fullerton Oral History Program a Japanese American project, which was the first such institution in the United States. Within the next 2 years, 1973 and 1974, I became fully immersed in the Manzanar experience. In 1973, I coordinated a University of California Irvine-based lecture series designated as Japanese Internment During World War II, a Socio-Historical Inquiry. It was also the first of its kind in the country. It included presentations by two former Manzanar inmates, Sue Kunitomi Embry and Togo Tanaka. When I announced to the large class of predominantly Japanese Americans enrolled in the lecture series that I planned to drive to the Owens Valley to the upcoming Manzanar pilgrimage and would provide transportation to that event, one Sansei woman took me up on my offer. This particular pilgrimage, the fifth one sponsored by the Manzanar Committee, was a landmark occasion. It drew a large throng of participants, was accorded lavish media coverage, and included contingents affiliated with the Manzanar Committee from all over the country. The Nikkei participants at the pilgrimage were asked to assemble themselves into groups designated by banners signifying the 10 Ori Location Authority camps. The Sansei woman who had accompanied me to the pilgrim duly joined the cluster of Nikkei, identifying themselves with the Gila River camp. It was the